so much, Mr. Arnold, and good evening to our Region 2 stakeholders and all stakeholders joining us this evening. We're happy that you've joined us for what we hope will be an informative town hall meeting. This meeting, as well as the others that will follow, we're doing a regional town hall with each of our regions, is the second phase of a partnership between you, our valued stakeholders, and the school district. This partnership is important because it will serve as another opportunity to provide increased quality instruction for our scholars, programs, and facilities. The Comprehensive Master Plan, or what we've coined as our CMP, and the process touches each of our strategic plan goals in our strategic plan from 2019 to 2024. However, Goal 1, Student Success with Equity and Access, and Goal Area 5, Facilities, will be the hallmark of this project. The CMP is not only a reflection of our strategic goals, it is another stroke on the canvas of our vision for the DeKalb County School graduate. Please understand that the information presented this evening are only recommendations. I'd like to just repeat that the recommendations, or the information presented tonight are only recommendations. And I actually love the title slide, Options Development, that we are still in the development phase of what the CMP will be. And we want to do that in true partnership with our stakeholders. During this phase of the process, we want your feedback on what is being proposed. And we hope that throughout the presentation, we're going to remind you of how to give us the feedback via the CMP email, as well as the survey that's posted on the CMP webpage. We want to thank you for your time this evening. We know that it's precious family time, so we thank you for prioritizing this time, and we look forward to continued engagement while we're building for the future. I will now turn it over to our partners in our operations division, as well as our partners from Perkins and Will. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. My name is Hans Williams. I am Director of Planning and East Blast Programming and Operations. And let me take you through the beginning of our options development presentation here as part of this our CMP Town Hall for Region 2. Next slide. So first, let me give you a preview of what you'll see on the Town Hall tonight. What you'll see is new buildings, early learning centers in every region, K-8s addressing continuity of instruction, mergers providing expanded programs and student support, more resources for instruction for students, and addition of programs to prepare students for the changing workforce. This options development presentation is about the big ideas that go into the CMP. There are lots of elements that the CMP will incorporate as in draft form in the coming weeks, and then finally in its final form when it's put in front of the board. But for these town halls during the month of October, what we really want to keep our focus on is these big ideas, where the new buildings are, where we might do K-8s, where the big new programs might be. And so that way, as we hear from tell you about where we are in the comprehensive master plan process. So the vision for the CMP was to bring all of the growth, all of the different decisions that the district has been making over the last few years and needs to make in the coming decade together into one unified vision and plan to put together a strategic plan around our facilities and programs that can help support the district's strategic plan. And so as part of that, the CMP is, we're presenting the options for tonight And then, as I mentioned before, there'll be a draft CMP that will be coming out here in the coming months. So let's move to the next slide. And so we can take a look at all the different components that I mentioned. First, of course, was the assessments, the facility assessments, all of the data really that went into the CMP, facility condition assessment, educational suitability assessment, district-wide demographic and forecasts, and inventory of special programs. This CMP has been going on, it seems like forever, but since last fall. And we've been working very closely with the district leadership, the community, with our partners at Perkins and Will to push this process forward and get to where we are now, where we can present options for recommendations for the CMP. The next major task as part of it, the CMP, is stakeholder engagement. That, as you can see, has been happening throughout the process. First, major engagement with the board, and then with our district stakeholders, both leadership, the stakeholders in the community, at schools, and then obviously here with the regional town halls here in the fall. There was a series of town halls in the spring as well, gathering initial input. And so the stakeholder input has been an integral part of the CMP from the very beginning. All of that has culminated here tonight and in these regional town halls here in October with the presentation of options for recommendations. You can see that in task 3 in gray, options for potential new programs, for facilities. And what you won't see as much tonight is redistricting and prioritization of facility condition improvements. As I said, tonight we're keeping the focus on big ideas. Where should a new school be? What early learning centers in every region? How do our stakeholders feel about that? Those components will absolutely be part of the draft CMP. So moving down to task 4, implementation plan and schedule of recommendations, the financial analysis of the recommendations, and that all culminates into the draft comprehensive master plan that we hope to put out in mid-November, coming out of based on all of the feedback from these October regional town hall meetings. That will go into a draft comprehensive master plan that will have all of the elements that everybody is looking for. Based on feedback from that draft CMP, we'll develop a final comprehensive master plan that will then go before the board. So now that we have an idea of where we are in the process, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen Brown of Perkins and Will, who can walk us through a bit of, as we've gone through this process, who have we talked to and what have we heard that has all gone into these option recommendations here tonight.
Thank you, Hans. I'd like to provide the stakeholders with an update on where we are with engagement, what we've heard so far, and also with an update on the assessment data. From the beginning of this process, we've made an effort to solicit input from a wide range of perspectives that can help develop a more nuanced picture of the district as a whole and the needs of all of its constituents. In addition to engaging regularly with school board, district staff, principal advisory committees, principals, we have continued to reach out to a variety of people and groups that are willing to talk with us and share their perspectives on DeKalb County schools and what they hope will result in the comprehensive master plan. We've steadily been ramping up our engagement to build a network of champions throughout the county. If you belong to an organization or a group that hasn't spoken with us and you feel that you have a valuable perspective to share, please reach out. These conversations are ongoing and we value your feedback. Listed here on the slide is a few of the organizations that we've spoken to date. Next slide. Across the district, we've heard about your frustrations with long deferred maintenance. It's clear that major investments need to be made in order to upgrade or replace aging facilities, also to rectify deferred maintenance issues and also eliminate trailers. Given the experience of the last year with remote learning, there's a strong recognition that technological infrastructure will continue to play a big role in the success of the schools and the needs to be the need that to be upgraded and made uniform across the district. One theme is the value that parents and families place on a variety and diversity of school choice programs that are available to their students. Many would like to see these offerings expanded in order to make them accessible to more students across the district. Another theme that we've heard is for a desire for more early childhood education options that would help prepare the district's children to be successful once they matriculate to the elementary schools. There's currently only one center for the district, and it continues to be oversubscribed. Next slide. We often hear about the importance of community and the role of schools in helping to create a sense of community. Sometimes this has to do with a strong correspondence between attendance zones and a variety of and various municipal boundaries. And in other cases, it simply has to do with the value of people placed on the role of neighborhood schools. We've also heard from communities that feel left out, but desperately want to build a stronger school community relationship. We believe this desire for community is a strong foundation for the development of the CMP. As part of those conversations, we were encouraged to reconsider current grade configurations and school sizes to increase diversity, limit middle school attrition, and make better use of available seats. DeKalb County is very diverse across the district, and we've heard that the constituents want to see that reflected in the student populations of the schools. Finally, many would like to see school facilities made more accessible for the use by the communities they serve. This could be for after-school programs, adult education, mentoring programs, and sports. Since school facilities are so prominent in many communities, let's make them available outside of normal school hours. Next slide. Throughout this engagement, we pulled together a few of the quotes that really spoke to us about what this master plan means to the community. As you can see here, there's focuses on equity, facilities, and infrastructure, thinking big, and also the worry of redistricting. Next slide. Also would like to provide an update on where we are with the assessment data. Within the last 2 weeks, updated versions of the draft reports have been published on the CMP website. These include the FCA reports, ESAs, capacity, and inventory of special programs. I'd like to thank all the community stakeholders, regional maintenance staff, school principals, and PACs for their invaluable input throughout this process. As stated here, these reports will remain in draft form until the final comprehensive master plan is issued. If you haven't seen your school reports, you can access them on the link provided in this presentation. And this presentation itself can be downloaded from the main comprehensive website as well. Next slide. Regarding the updated FCA reports, we just want to reiterate that these are part of our QA/QC. They incorporate feedback from all stakeholders, and they have been reviewed by the CMP team and district. As you look through it, as you look at these updated reports, you'll see changes in the scores, but the averages across the district remain relatively the same. Schools that are currently listed in poor condition are still the same, and those targeted for upgrades remain as well. Next slide. With the updated FCA scores, we've created a graphic here just to show that the averages by the cluster and region, so you can get an overall sense across the district. Since the last issue of the draft FCAs, scoring averages across the district vary by plus or minus 5 points. As we present the options development tonight, please note that within these, while these reports are important, the FCAs are only one component in a list of many that will inform a prioritized list of needs for facilities across the district.
Thank you, Stephen. I am Barbara Crum, also with Perkins and Will, and I know many of you and have talked to many of you, and I appreciate all of your input that you've given us over the last 8 months. It's been terrific, and it really makes a difference in where we're going. Let me say to you, there are a couple themes that have continued to pop up as we've gone through the master plan. And the first one I put on the slide. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. This one. It's very interesting. As I said, certain themes have continued to pop up from various groups, from various stakeholders. And one of the things early on, the chairman of the board said to us was change is hard, and it is hard. And every time we talk about something, there are pros and cons. Remember, as we go through the master plan, change is hard, and we know that. Also, remember, one of the other things we heard a lot is everybody gets something, but no one gets everything. We are trying to look at the district as a whole, and we are really trying to hit the needs throughout the district and be very equitable about what we are suggesting. So do remember, as we go through this, everyone gets something, but no one gets everything. And then, as everyone has said, think big. We are trying to give you a picture. And let me remind you, as the superintendent said, this is recommendations and it is looking at 2031. This is a 10-year plan. We really don't, nothing's going to happen tomorrow. Children aren't moving tomorrow. Schools aren't being built tomorrow. Everything is on a 2-year, 5-year, 8-year, 10-year. But think big, think big. Why did my thing keep going off? Sorry. The goals of the comprehensive plan, and I think we have talked about some of these before, but let me reiterate, we've talked about the data-driven sort of goals that we are looking at, the data-driven things we are addressing, but we're also addressing a number of qualitative as well as quantitative criteria. And the goals of comprehensive master plan, from the things that you have said to us, really deal with trying to maintain neighborhood schools, but being sensitive to costs. We want to maximize the monies that we can spend on instruction and programs. We want to maintain schools while diversifying the student demographics. We understand that, you know, the district, as Stephen said, is diverse, and we want that reflected in the schools. We also want to address the overcrowding. We talked about looking at schools that will be 100% overutilized in 2031. God, it keeps going. Similarly, we'd like to address schools that are underutilized, schools that would be under 70% in 2031. And we'd like to address the facility condition schools that have scores below 60. The other things that came out of all the conversation that we had with the stakeholders was looking at different grade configurations. He's going to give me a different, excuse me, they're going to change my mic out here. Okay, thank you. We looked a lot, we had a lot of conversation with various stakeholders about looking at different grade configurations. And one of the things that came out of there was looking at K-8s. And the reason that we sort of gravitated to looking at K-8s, there was lots of conversation about attrition at the middle schools. Students stayed in the elementaries and they came back for high school. And they came back for, go back one. Thank you. They came back for high school. So we talked about, you know, what could we do to deal with this attrition? So we looked at doing K-8s. It also helped. We have a lot of seats in the district in elementary schools where we could increase those classes to be 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. So looking at K-8s became a real win-win across the district for us. And the last thing we looked at is really maximizing the resources. Next slide, please. We talked about a couple soft qualitative criteria, and one of them was really looking at the clusters and the feeder patterns. As I said, we looked at hard data and we looked at soft data and all of the things you said to us. We looked at trying to balance the feeder patterns going into the middle schools. The district has middle schools that are 1,200 students and high schools that are 1,600 students. And those seem to be a really successful, healthy population. And what that means is the 6th grade going into the middle school is 400 students. And those 400 students are a cohort that matriculate all the way through from 6th through 12th grade. So in looking at the master plan, we looked at balancing those patterns of the elementary schools that feed into middle, creating a class of 400 students. Next, please. The other thing we looked at and we talked about, we looked at there's, you know, districts, there are regions within the district that are underutilized, have schools with underutilized seats, and there are districts that have overcrowding. And we really, the district is so large, we couldn't just simply balance it by sending kids in overcrowding schools to kids where there's seats. So we just realized that we're going to have to deal with that, and we can't totally align the population within the seats within the district. Next, please. And thirdly, we did look at expanding programs and saving money. There are a lot of schools in the district that are small and in not good, very good condition. And we realized that the finances of keeping those schools open is spending a lot of money that could be spent in instruction. So we talked about, you know, looking at where we could consolidate it, where it made the most sense. We also did a little research about school size. And basically, we looked at other districts with this amount of students. And it turned out that 130 schools for, you know, a district of 93,000 students was really too many. And so we realized we do have too many schools. Many of them are too small. Most comparative districts that we looked at have elementary schools that are, 800, 900 students, even 1,200 students. So we sort of thought the prototype that you have, that's the 1,200, the 900 student elementary school, makes a lot of sense. So you'll see we're suggesting some mergers of schools to get to that 900 student base. In general, the real driver for this was, it is to save money, but we realized when you consolidate some of these schools that have populations right now of 400 students, basically, you can fill a school that's 900, but you also get other support staff. You get other social workers, counselors, you can do other programs. So it seemed to us, not only are you saving money, but you're truly expanding programs. You're spending money on instruction instead of maintaining facilities. Next, please. So as I said, those were sort of some of the soft criteria. Now I'd like to sort of share with you the hard data that drove us to some of our recommendations. Next, please. This is a map that just shows you, I think it's very telling, just the FCA scores. You can see that the yellow dots are really the FCA scores, the orange dots below 60%, and the green dots are the ones above 60%, from 60 to 100% on the FCA scores. And I think it's quite telling. Most of those, well, they're all over the district, but there are a number of them in Region 2. So we're trying to address those first, the ones that are in the least good condition. Next, please. The next map, you're not going to be able to read this on here, but it will be on the website, and it shows you the schools with the lowest FCA scores. And I just wanted you to have that information. Next, please. Similarly, I think this is a very telling map. This is sort of the overall utilization. And again, you'll see the schools that are in red are the ones that are overcrowded. The ones that are in blue are the ones with underutilization. And you'll see that there's a great number of schools in Region 1 and Region 2 that will be overcrowded in 2031. So again, we want to sort of target those schools. Next, please. And again, I've included here the list that you can look on the website, and you can see the schools again that will be over 100% utilization in 2031, and the ones that will be under 70% utilization in 2030. Deal with those and maximize the use of your facilities. Next, please. Again, I think these are very telling maps. These come from our demographer, and they're just a sort of picture outlook there for elementary schools, then middle schools in the middle, and then on the right-hand side, high schools. And you can see where the growth is in the district in the next 10 years. That's the 2030, 2031 school year of where the overcrowding will be and where the underutilization. And it's interesting. You can see that in the elementary schools, it's sort of spread throughout. And in the middle schools, it's very much in Region 1 and 2. And in the high schools, again, it's sort of spread throughout the district. Next one, please. And so now with that sort of hard data and that sort of soft data, as I call it, the qualitative and the quantitative, I'd love to share with you sort of our big ideas. And again, remember, as the superintendent said, these are recommendations. Nothing is set in stone. We want your input. We want more input from you and your feeling about these. I hope they represent what we have heard from you for the last 8 months. And we still continue to want to hear your feedback. Next, please. Again, the biggest issue, and I think you all have seen this before in some of the presentations we've shared with you, the biggest issue is the forecasted overcrowding in Region 1 and Region 2. And most of it is in Region 1 in the high schools. And you will see that all 3 of those high schools are projected to be 50% over capacity in 2031. In the middle schools, Sequoia's again 50%, and the other 2 middle schools will also be way over capacity. So that to us seemed to be the biggest need. So our biggest idea is, the next slide, please, is really building a new cluster. We want to build the new Cross Keys first. Let me start with that, because the Cross Keys was a project that has been in the works for a number of years. It was supposed to be in SPLOST 5, and we realized, it's going to be 50% over capacity. So we absolutely want to put that as a priority to build Cross Keys. And to deal with the overcrowding in the district, we are suggesting we create a new cluster. We build a new Sequoia High School to take some of the heat off the overcrowding. I know in the last SPLOST, it was suggested to build additions at Chamblee and at Dunwoody. And our feeling is those are small sites. You could do that, but it would be more, it makes more sense to us to build a whole new high school and not overcrowd those sites. Let those high schools be for the number that they were originally built for. So we're suggesting a new Sequoia cluster with a new high school and a new middle school. And to be able to do that, we are suggesting that we consolidate Dresden Elementary School and Cary Reynolds and consolidate them on the Dresden site. That opens up land next to the Sequoia Middle School where we could do a high school and then rebuild the middle school. Similarly, to deal with some of the overcrowding and the utilization in District 1, we're suggesting that that would be a very good place to do a K-8 at Austin and to do a K-8 at the new Dunwoody. And what that does for us, it again addresses the attrition at middle school, it addresses the continued instruction and has all the good academic things about it, but it also keeps us from having to build middle school seats at Chamblee and Peachtree Middle. If we can put some of those middle kids in a 6th grade, a 7th grade, and an 8th grade in what are we don't have to build middle school seats. So I hope I got that. Did you get that? Anyway, the other big overcrowding is at Stone Mountain High School. And so you will see that we're suggesting building an addition at Stone Mountain High School. Next, please. Also dealing with the overcrowding and with poor condition. As I said to you, we are trying to look at the biggest needs, and the biggest needs were always the utilization and the poor condition. And so we are looking at elementary schools. And as I said early on, it's the elementary schools in the district that are small and underutilized or overutilized and in bad condition. So we are suggesting a new Idlewood, a new Jolly, a new Stoneview, a new Hightower, a new Ashford Park, and a new Farrington Elementary School. Next, please. And addressing the underutilization, as I said to you, and helping so we don't have to build so many middle school seats. We're suggesting creating the K-8s, and we're trying to put them throughout the district so that everybody has an opportunity in each region to have a K-8 school. And so again, Austin and the new Dunwoody, but also Smoke Rise, building a K-8 at Smoke Rise creating a K-8 at Smoke Rise in the existing building takes the heat off having to build middle school seats at Tucker, where there's going to be some overcrowding in 2031. Similarly, we're suggesting Indian Creek and Pleasantdale and Peachcrest. And one of the things we heard from the Clarkston community is they would very much like a middle school closer to where the children are going to high school. And although we can't build a middle school immediately, it is in the plan, but we could answer some of that need by putting a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade at Indian Creek, which would be much closer to the high school. Next, please. In the mergers, we're looking at really underutilization and poor condition. And again, this is where we really are suggesting, and these are hard. I know these are hard. I heard from your communities how much you love your elementary schools, but we also heard from the principals at the larger elementary schools, all of the advantages those schools have. The fact that the children and the teachers all move to those schools, and you get more support, you get more programs, and you get better buildings. You get new and better buildings, and we're not putting money taking care of old, underutilized buildings that are not in very good shape. So we are suggesting in the long run, and this is not tomorrow, merging Midville and Lindsay, merging Dunair and Allgood, and merging Hawthorne and Henderson Mill. And one of the things we talked about is not ever taking those buildings out of service, but finding other things for them. And you will see we're suggesting in some of those locating the early learning centers. So we want to keep the buildings, but we just don't think it makes a lot of sense to have elementary schools in all of those. Next one, please. There were some additional priorities that came out that really weren't totally driven by data or driven by the overutilization or the underutilization or the FCAs, but for other soft reasons. And one of them was building an addition and a major renovation at Druid Hills High School. Druid Hills High School has an old elementary school that houses a number of its high school classrooms. And basically those classrooms are undersized. They were the wrong they're just the wrong classrooms to be able to do the kinds of things that IB program does at Druid Hills. So we think that you really need a major renovation and addition at Druid Hills. It doesn't increase capacity. It just increases space for those programs. It improves space for those programs. One of the other things that came out of a lot of the conversation was to merge Stone Mill and Stone Mountain elementary schools to better serve that mobile population. There are a lot of children who go to either Stone Mill or Stone Mountain who end up changing elementary schools during the year as their families move. And these kids really don't have the continuity of their program. And so if we could build a large elementary school there with a bigger catchment area, even when the children move, they stay at the same school. So we thought that was important. And the other thing I alluded to before is the Clarkston High School and the Clarkston Middle School. Clarkston High School needs some classroom additions and it needs some upgrades. So we're looking at either rebuilding it, repurposing it, adding to it. But the thing that we'd like to do is add a middle school in that area. And we're looking, could we put it on the could we put it on the Clarkston site? And if not, could we look for property in that area? But definitely re-looking at the high school and the middle school in that area. Next one, please. And just some of the school choice, we had a lot of conversations about school choice and a lot of conversation about the Performing Arts High School and the Performing Arts K-8 school. And we are recommending that we build a new Performing Arts Academy at the Avondale High School site. The site is well located, it's easy access, it's a good place for it. We looked at other alternatives, but we also, if there was a consensus to build it at the Avondale High School site. The other two things we're suggesting creating a career tech academy at McNair High School. A lot of the parents throughout the district asked for more career tech options and really preparing kids for the workforce. And so we said, let's really do a serious career tech high school or a career tech academy at McNair. The other thing we are suggesting is doing a cyber technology and engineering academy. We are finding cyber technology and the jobs in cybersecurity are really growing like crazy. And we thought this is an area that we should prepare kids for. And the last thing that we're suggesting here is to expand Wadsworth and Kittredge through 8th grade. And I think that was sort of universally asked for. And again, we understand how difficult it was to have 6th graders go into middle school in the middle year. So I think everyone said just expand it to 8th grade and then all of those children go into high school together. The last thing on this sheet, we had a lot of conversation across the district with parents, with PACs, with teachers about the high achiever programs, even with community leaders. A lot of the mayors and a lot of the different commissioners we talked about the high achiever programs and offering those kind of programs in all schools to all students. And although we can't solve this necessarily in the time frame of the master plan, the comprehensive master plan, we are suggesting that the district look at this, reevaluate their high achiever programs and look at them throughout the district. Just to reiterate, the early learning centers, we're suggesting an early learning center right now in every region. And long-term, we may have more of them as some facilities become available, but just day one, we think that it's important to have one in every region. Next, please. And then building the future by region. And I can go through these quickly and spend a little more time on region 2, but let's go through region 1 real quickly. In region 1, we're suggesting, most of this I shared with you already, but probably what I didn't share with you to sort of balance out those clusters and get that 400 student cohort going into middle schools. We're suggesting moving Hightower and then do Dunwoody to the Chamblee cluster. And we're suggesting moving Ashford Park to the Cross Keys cluster. I talked to you, I think, about the Sequoia cluster, which would be fed by Cary Reynolds, Doraville, Dresden, and Oak Cliff. And then we talked about building the new elementaries there and building the new Cross Keys. I think everything else I talked to you about. Oh, creating the early learning center in that district, in that region, we were suggesting Kingsley. Next, please. This is the one that's probably of most importance and interest to this group. Here we were suggesting possibly moving the Sagamore Hills Elementary School to the Druid Hills cluster. Basically, Sagamore Hills right now feeds Lakeside, and Lakeside is overcrowded. So if we could move that, it's close to Druid Hills. I think at one point it maybe was in the Druid Hills cluster. So we are suggesting that. We're also suggesting here making the K-8s, we're creating a K-8 at Smoke Rise and possibly at Pleasantdale. One of the things about creating the K-8s, let me say to you, they are, we are looking at putting them in the middle in the elementary school buildings, but we are looking at sort of designating money to change some of those rooms in there to science rooms so you can support a middle school, to connections, rooms for connections, adding locker rooms. And we're looking at, fields, and if we had to acquire some property to do fields for those. So we want to make those middle schools and make those buildings, really support the middle school program. So with the K-8, so we're looking at how to do that. Similarly, looking at the early learning centers, and again, we would go in and do some renovations in those buildings to adapt for small children. We talked here about building the new Idlewood, and we talked about building building the addition and the renovation at Druid Hills. And these are the ones where these are the consolidating Hawthorne and Henderson Mill. You'll see Hawthorne and Henderson Mill both are in poor condition. They both had very low FCAs. So as opposed to spending a lot of money fixing up those schools, it just seemed that, again, financially, it makes such sense to put them together and really get more programs, more teachers, more help, more support staff, and really have a vibrant school. Similarly, Midville and Livesey were suggesting. And this is the bottom one here in Region 2 is the new Performing Arts Academy. Next, please. Again, just, sort of to go through the rest of it, we are suggesting building a new Stoneview Elementary. That one, again, had a very low FCA score, and create an early learning center here. We're suggesting Pine Ridge. In time, it might end up at another facility. Next. And then Region 4, making, as I said, Indian Creek a K-8, which really helps with the middle school desire at Clarkston. Here we suggested the early learning center at Allgood. It could go elsewhere. And again, the consolidation here of Dunair and Allgood. The new Jolly was one of the schools with the poorest FCA. I think it might have been the poorest FCA, and with overcrowding, a good deal of overcrowding in 2031. The Clarkston, dealing with the Clarkston community, and then Stone Mountain, the addition. Next, please. Region 5, moving Farrington back into the Miller Grove cluster, which it's right near the Miller Grove cluster right now, and the Early Learning Center at Rainbow, and then building the new Farrington and building a new Chapel Hill Elementary. Next, please. Region 6, Early Learning Center at Tony, and creating a K-8 at Peachcrest, and then creating the Career Technology and Engineering Academy. We got a lot of good feedback about this. We have a lot of students who are, who are gamers, who can do this, who are interested in this, and this really takes that skill to the next level. Next, please. And then we got a lot of conversation about really doing a Career Tech Academy where you could really, have big spaces, and McNair offers big spaces for automotive and aviation and any of those programs that really need high bay spaces and big spaces. So it seemed like a very good site for that. And then we would suggest folding the DeKalb Tech South programs into McNair, because those programs are oversubscribed and they're really strong programs, and we'd like them to be with the big Career Tech Academy and really enhance those programs. Next, please. So in general, that's sort of our building the future. And now we have, we've put out here a tentative time frame, and I'll share this with you. But basically, we talked about a sort of 1 to 2 year time frame, a 2 to 3 year, a 2 to 5 year time frame, and a 5 to 10. And this is not set in stone by any means, but we were trying very hard to really to sort of say which were the priority projects that we really wanted to get done. And everything seems to go into that 2 to 5 year. We want to do it right away. But we did say if we could immediately start the design on Cross Keys, because it's been promised for so long, and if we could start the design and really begin to move Cary Reynolds to Dresden, it begins to open up that site, which means we could hit the ground running and design the Sequoia Middle and High School for that site. And we thought early on we could do some of the K-8s. That would be easy to try. It doesn't take a lot of renovation for those buildings, and we could do that probably over a summer and be able to do that. That would be the first thing we could really implement in the plan. So again, this is hard to read, but it will be on the website. You certainly can look at it and, bat it around, question it, ask questions about it, send us questions about it. Next, please. And again, there was so much conversation about the HVAC and roof replacements. I just added this slide to the deck to share with you. These are projects that are already in design or construction. There are 22 projects that are underway, and the operations folks are looking right now at prioritizing the next bunch. They will deal with every school that's under 60, that's scored under 60% with the FCAs. So we are really looking to immediately take care of those. And I know they are working right now on that priority list, and within the next month would have that and really addressing all of those issues, because we heard loud and clear from day one, fix our schools. So I'm thrilled that at least 22 projects are underway. Next, please. So just in summary, let me say, what the big ideas here really were, and just reiterate, this is a 2031 project. This is not happening tomorrow. So it's long-term, it's hopefully thinking big, and hopefully everybody gets something, but no one gets everything, and change is hard. And I know that. So, hopefully we are addressing the overcrowding with new facilities. We're addressing the underutilization and poor facility condition by merging schools. We're creating K-8s and early learning centers to really enhance academic programs. We're increasing diversity and equity by the redistricting. We're not doing a tremendous amount of redistricting, but we think what we're doing will really help the feeder patterns and even things out so we don't have overcrowding and underutilization. And most of all, I think we're really looking to be good stewards of the district's money and really save money and expand programs by merging schools and looking at where we can do school choice and the best programs that serve the district. So thank you very much. On that note, we just sort of wanted some feedback from you, and we'd love for you to sort of tell us what excites you most about the master plan, the vision. You know, we put some ideas up here. If you have other things that excite you, please share them with you. There's a Menti code and a QR thing at the bottom for you to please look at, please do. This also will be on the website. Please let us know which of these things excite you most. And if you have other thoughts, please share them with us. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for all the time and energy you all have put in and letting us hear from you throughout the year, answering our surveys, giving us feedback, letting our people come through your schools, talking to us as PACs, as parents, as cluster representatives. It really has really driven the master plan. So thank you so much.
So I have a few questions that are in the Q&A. The first one is, how will the details of the plan be shared?
All of the elements of the comprehensive master plan, all of the presentation from tonight, all of the components that go into the draft CMP, everything that we're putting out there as part of the CMP will be on the district CMP webpage. That's the main DeKalb webpage /comprehensive-master-plan. Or as I tell folks, the easiest way to get there is to go to the main DeKalb webpage, scroll down beneath the lovely picture of Madam Superintendent, and there's a link to comprehensive master plan. Once you get there, off to the side, you can see tabs that say assessment data for any of the, if you're interested in any of the data that's come out so far. Public input, where you can see versions of the all of the recordings, excuse me, of the town halls that we've had up until this point, and where all of the town halls here, recordings of these town halls here in October will be put. And then even just on the main page, you can see links to all of the other town hall meetings, as well as a link to the presentation you saw here tonight. And just below the little announcement box that you see that comes up we say it's a new CMP stakeholder feedback survey. That is mostly a broad general survey about comments that you might have, the community might have on elements of the comprehensive master plan, but also has this question: what excites you most about the CMP vision? The same one that Barbara asked. So another way, and I just want to make sure that everybody understands all the different ways to get feedback to us, is if there are any messages, anything longer that won't fit on the survey, then please email us at cmp@dekalbschoolsga.org.
Okay, another question, it's a little bit long. Stress increased students' access to high achievers. 1 in 5 children have a language processing disorder, and DeKalb is part of the dyslexia pilot program. How can we incorporate programs to support your exceptional learners? This would also help the loss of students to private specialized schools.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
Do you want me to repeat?
Yeah, repeat
thing?
the question for me.
Okay. 1 in 5 children have language processing disorder, and DeKalb is part of the dyslexia pilot program. How can we incorporate programs to support your exceptional learners? This would also help the loss of students to private specialized schools. So it's really addressing the specialty programs for our learners.
Thank you. And I apologize. Part of what I had to think about was a lot of the CMP is very focused on facilities. And so that doesn't mean that we're not considering programming. It just means that a lot of what we're thinking of is how can we make decisions and put into the comprehensive master plan things that will help facility decisions or where major programs are that can support that vision over the next 10 years. At the same time, the district itself is looking at all of the different special programs that we have. What is the vision of the district and how can that go in parallel with the strategic plan, and how can the comprehensive master plan support that? So the short answer is the CMP doesn't directly address those kinds of that kind of programming right now. But at the same time, it is very much part of the conversation as we're looking at what are the needs of our facilities, both individually, but also in general, when we're looking at any new schools that might be built, the design that goes into it, making sure that our facilities support the programming of our students today and into the future over the next 10 years.
If you don't mind me just adding on to that, because I want to make sure, thank you so much for that, Mr. Williams. I want to make sure that our parent who lifted that up knows that we hear the concern and wants to make sure that we are communicating the impact of being a part of the pilot is actually having on our improvement plan. So just last evening, I had a chance to meet with our PAC advisory committee, and they lifted up areas that they believe we need to improve upon, and that's communicating how we're meeting the needs of all our exceptional students. So to that parent, please know that you're heard, and it's not going to take the CMP for us to continue to do better by our exceptional education students. And we know that addressing dyslexia and other processing challenges that our students have is something that we definitely have to focus on and improve now. So thank you so much for that.
Okay, this is an easier one. When merging schools, is there a plan to update the buildings at all?
Yes, and I think maybe that didn't get communicated as well as we were hoping. The merging of schools is the bringing the two schools together into a new school. They would be rebuilding one of those schools and bringing those two schools together. So the idea is to, as Barbara says, replace some of our older, poor condition, less utilized schools, bring them together into one larger, newer school that can consolidate resources. What was the line, Barbara? You say it very much better than I do.
I know it's really expanding programs, I think, and I'm sorry I didn't say that. The whole intent was to build a new, fresh school for 900 students, and then use whatever school we've left empty for something else and fix it up if it's going to be an early learning center or whatever program. It might be an administrative building, it might be an early learning center, whatever needs the district has. But basically the consolidated school would be a brand new school. And we are spending dollars then on program. We want to be able to expand program and offer more. And when you have 900 students, those principals in those schools have said to us, they're able to do much more. They have much more support staff. They have much more facilities for expanded programs.
Another question, will traffic studies be done on the new merged facility sites?
Yes, we do traffic studies as part of every new build. And so as the mergers are coming together into a new facility, there'll be traffic studies for that new facility. One moment while we work out the next question.
Here's another one. I am curious about the population forecasting because in healthcare, we are forecasting growth outside of the Metro Atlanta area due to professions having all or partial virtual remote work conditions. Plus the cost of housing is increasing. That drives families further out into the suburbs. How old is the data that we're using?
The forecast that the CMP is using was done, it was completed in the spring of 2021. So it does not yet incorporate data from this fall, but it does incorporate data from fall of 2020 into the spring. And so, yes, we are very much looking at the impacts of the pandemic and all of the different uncertainties that go into changes in inflow and outflows of population in and out of the district, how that changes the single family housing, how it changes new construction, all of the different components of that. Cropper GIS is the consultant we've been working with on that forecast, and they have done a very good job of taking a look at base changes to the base population of DeKalb County as a whole, and then how that applies to the district and district students specifically.
Okay, and I think we have time for just one more. This idea that not anyone gets everything would be fair if the schools ask for fancy things. Parents and educators ask for good roof, functioning bathrooms that are ADA accessible, and HVACs. Can you assure us that those needs will be fixed in the next 2 years? 2 years.
I think 2 years might be a hard ask. We are looking at all of the resources that we have available, from what's SPLOST 5, from CARES Act funds, looking into SPLOST 6, and one of the deliverables, one of the things that's coming out of the CMP is a prioritized list of all of the facility condition improvements, from new roofs and new HVAC all the way down to replacing bathroom toilets and different plumbing. All of the different needed facility condition improvements are being prioritized. That prioritized list is part of the CMP. That list in turn informs the draft ESPOS 6 project list. And at the same time, parallel to the CMP, we are looking at that same prioritization when we're looking at CARES Act funds. What schools do we want to be going out to as soon as possible, looking at new roofs, new HVAC, paying forward with that, and then looking at ESPLOST 5. Are there additional revenues above and beyond what was originally forecasted for ESPLOST 5? And if so, where can we direct those to, again, immediately address our great need for facility condition improvements across the district? So it's difficult for me to say everything will be done in 2 years, but what I can say is in the next few months, you'll be seeing what will it look like over the next several years. What is the district's plan for addressing these with the funding sources we have and even going beyond those funding sources, what is the prioritization? What is the list that we're going down? And as new money comes in, as additional sources of revenue are identified, we go to the next school on the list and say, this school is next to get a new roof. This school is next to get an HVAC. Those we will be seeing over the next few months.
I promise this is the last question. When would the mentioned redistricting take place? In 2031 or sooner? Will it be a gradual process as new schools are built? Also, is there a space for Kittredge to expand to 4-8 in the current facility?
Answering the redistricting part of the question first. Redistricting happens the year before, I'm sorry, the fall before any new capacity would open generally. At the moment, the redistricting isn't a big part of what was presented tonight and what's in these the draft recommendations that are being presented, so that we can focus on those big ideas. However, redistricting and redistricting recommendations will be a component of that draft CMP. That being said, the implementation, what that redistricting looks like from year to year, will be more gradual. There's no need to redistrict for a school that hasn't yet been built and won't be built for another 2 to 3 to 5 years. That being said, some redistricting, what redistricting will look like specifically for next year and the year after is being talked about, but I don't anticipate as many of these recommendations that we're talking about that are being presented are longer term recommendations. So too with the redistricting around that be a longer term and more gradual implementation. The second part of the question, can you say that second part again? Kittredge, I apologize. There are a number of recommendations where identifying the exact facilities, the exact solutions to those, how we're not yet ready to put out there. Again, we're looking at what is the community's input on how do people feel about K-8s? How do people feel about raising Kittredge and Wadsworth to K-8, or to 4-8, excuse me. And then yes, the current Kittredge facility is not even big enough for the kids that are there. There are portable classrooms there. And so if that school has, if there's a desire to bring that school up to a 4-8, we would have to identify additional space somewhere or a new facility. And that is absolutely going to be part of the conversation now and part of what will the draft recommendations.
That's it.
Well, thank you. We just want to acknowledge Marcia Coward. If you heard her voice, we're so grateful that she could be with us this evening to read the chat and to lift up your questions. As always, we're so thankful for her team that comes out to support these town halls on the technical side of the house, and also all of our friends that support the town halls. Thank you again to Regional Superintendent, Mr. Arnold, for being in community this evening. Mr. Hans Williams, Mr. Boyd is also in the house. We thank you so much for the time and our valued partners from Perkins and Will. So it is now 7 o'clock, and we want to thank you again for joining us. I just want to lift up one of the slides that was shared earlier in the presentation. I believe it was slide 8, where some specific quotes from our stakeholders were lifted. And just to the last question on redistricting, the quote was, "The thought of getting redistricted at this point horrifies us. Just when we might be getting back to a sense of community, it would be a terrible time for us." And I just want to assure the community, because whenever that word comes up, it causes a lot of angst and emotion. And we want to promise, as we continue to build trust with our larger stakeholder group, that we're hoping to co-construct the vision of where we go as a school system. And that's exactly why we have these town halls, to get your input and your feedback. So it's important that I underscore again that these are recommendations. They're recommendations for us to begin a dialogue, that we're tracking towards 2031. So this isn't anything that's going to change life for us tomorrow. And we really hope that you will send any input or feedback via the CMP email address, or go to our CMP page and complete the survey. That really is the best place to give us the feedback, so that we can chunk it and trend it and see what the major themes are. So again, I thank you for being in community with us this evening. Thank you for your questions, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. I just want to acknowledge all Board of Education members that are with us this evening. Thank you so much for coming out, for your support, for your push, your accountability, and we're better together. So I hope that everyone has a great evening, and we look forward to seeing you at our next town hall.